Throughout the country, agencies are considering transportation resilience to any form of disruption as a critical component of their agency's policy and program decision making. Evacuation plans are part of state and county emergency operations plans that help the public prepare to respond to disasters. The Hillsborough TPO is conducting the study to identify and evaluate emergency evacuation options that could reduce the need to add lanes to existing roads. We have a working list of ideas to study and want to make sure it addresses items of concern for residents, visitors, and business owners of Hillsborough County. This evening, we will share some data and evacuation options. Most importantly, we want to hear from you about how your evacuation and shelter experiences during a tropical storm or hurricane, for example, could be improved. There will be a 30-minute presentation followed by a 30-minute Q&A. At approximately 5:30 p.m., the presentation will be given again, followed by additional Q&A until 6:30 p.m. We will be using polling throughout the open house and look forward to hearing from you. Hurricane season starts June 1st and lasts until November 30th each year. The season typically peaks in August through early October as surface temperatures in the Atlantic hit their highest temperatures. Tropical storms are fueled by the warm waters, causing more potent storms later in the year. As we observed recently with Tropical Storm Fred, it is important to remain alert. NOAA's 2021 predictions include 15 to 21 named storms, 7 to 10 hurricanes, 3 to 5 major hurricanes, and the likelihood of an above normal season is 65%. Tampa Bay is very fortunate to have avoided major storm strikes in 100 years. The Tampa Bay Hurricane of 1921 was the most recent major hurricane to strike the Tampa Bay area and the second latest major hurricane to strike the continental United States on record, behind Hurricane Zeta in 2020. The storm resulted in 8 fatalities and $10 million in damage. Every year is different, and a single storm can wreak havoc on our area. The hurricanes shown here are Hurricane Irma from 2017 and Hurricane Wilma from 2005. Hurricane Irma's path was unpredictable, resulting in the largest statewide evacuation. Hurricane Wilma demonstrated the impacts that can occur from storms that move from west to east. As I mentioned, Hurricane Irma in 2017 resulted in the largest evacuation in Florida's history. This video provides an overview of the Hurricane Irma evacuation. The roads with higher traffic are shown in red, and you'll see counties highlighted as evacuation orders are instituted. It provides daily information for approximately a week prior to landfall. In the video, you'll notice that the roads in the Tampa Bay region were impacted early as Southeast Florida and the Keys evacuated. Later, Southwest Florida and the local areas evacuate. Later in the presentation, we'll provide some specifics about Hillsborough County roads. As mentioned during the introduction, evacuation plans are part of state and county emergency operations plans to prepare for disasters such as hurricanes and tropical storms. They include shelters, evacuation routes, traffic control points, or those areas where the entrance or the exit must be limited, transportations for persons unable to evacuate on their own, and strategies to mitigate potential impacts from a disaster. In response to any emergency or disaster, the public has 2 choices: evacuate or shelter in place. The Hillsborough TPO is conducting this study to see how the transportation agency and partners can improve evacuations when they become necessary. This includes helping people evacuate to local shelters to areas more inland or outside of Hillsborough County. We all hear about being prepared for hurricane season. Transportation and emergency management agencies also prepare, running tests and models to simulate potential disasters. This study will provide recommendations for future enhancements. To assess how well an evacuation might go or where improvements might be needed, emergency managers look at how long it would take to evacuate people in harm's way, called the clearance time. The evacuation level relates to the evacuation zones and hurricane category where people are asked to leave. The clearance time for Level C, generally a Category 3 hurricane for Hillsborough County, is projected at 24 hours to a shelter and nearly 30 hours for evacuations outside of the county. These projections reflect people reacting quickly to a hurricane watch or warning. Watches are issued 48 hours in advance and warnings 36 hours in advance of when tropical force winds are anticipated. At this scale of wind speed, it is more difficult to support evacuation. Buses, trains, and bridges may not be available. People often ask about how the models know if, when, and where people will evacuate. Historically, as part of the original statewide regional evacuation study program conducted between 2007 and 2008, a behavioral study was conducted surveying 18,800 Floridians regarding their behavioral response to hurricanes. This information was utilized in the development of the Transportation Interface for Modeling Evacuations, or TIME software. Since that time, Florida has faced numerous hurricanes, with the hurricane seasons from 2016 to 2019 being particularly active. From 2008 to 2019, the state has experienced a 17% growth in population, and this has brought newer residents with limited experience dealing with hurricanes and more housing being built on land that previously might have acted as a barrier to the impacts of hurricanes. All of these factors make it imperative to collect new data and to understand evacuation behavior. A recent study for Florida DOT found that 18% of coastal county residents did not evacuate since they did not want to leave their homes or underestimated the severity of the hurricane. Another 8% could not afford to leave or had nowhere to stay. To collect new data for the 2021 study, anonymized cell phone data or location-based services data were used to learn when and where people evacuate to and respond to hurricane evacuation information. The Regional Planning Council used the data to obtain behavioral rates for the hurricane seasons from 2016 to 2020, focusing on the big three hurricanes that struck Florida during this period: Matthew in 2016, Irma in 2017, and Michael in 2018. The clearance rates shown in the information I'll show later are from the 2021 study. You may be wondering why the Hillsborough TPO is conducting this study. We want to understand the transportation-related needs of people when evacuating. Then we will evaluate potential solutions to address those needs, focusing on options that don't require major road widening. We will then test and identify feasible options, and lastly, provide recommendations for the TPO and its partners to consider. The objective for this open house is the first task of the study: to identify transportation-related evacuation and sheltering needs. The list on the right shows some of the information that will be evaluated and potential improvements. For example, if people are evacuating to inland areas of the county, local solutions are more important versus strategies for highways and vice versa. Are there operational improvements that might improve vehicle flow where a strategy for coordinating traffic signals can be evaluated? Are there small changes that would help relieve bottlenecks on evacuation routes? People without access to a vehicle may need to rely on public transportation to evacuate. Are there needs or ideas for improvements? Next, we're going to provide you with some information about evacuation and sheltering in Hillsborough County. Hopefully, this map of evacuation zones is well known to everyone here. The zones correspond with areas that are projected or estimated to experience storm surge during a Category 1 through Category 5 hurricane. All mobile homes, manufactured homes, and RVs are mandated to evacuate when any orders are in effect, regardless of hurricane category. People expect coastal areas to be subject to surge, yet we sometimes forget about river environments and how water can be pushed upstream. Evacuation zones do not address wind speed. People outside evacuation zones may choose to leave their homes due to wind or anticipated flooding. The map of Hillsborough County on the screen shows identified roadway evacuation routes in blue, such as the highways and State Road 60. These roads are marked for evacuation and other roads direct people to them. During an evacuation, HART adjusts its routes to support evacuation by emphasizing areas closer to the bay. These routes are shown as the purple dashed lines. All of the public shelters are shown on this map and are shown as general or those that accept pets. There are also medical needs shelters. The study website provides a link to county information for more details. These are the current evacuation routes and shelters. The lists are reviewed and revised annually. This map focuses on shelters and public transportation during evacuation. HART provides transit service as shown here, and the school district has traditionally provided buses and drivers to assist with evacuations in other areas. While these are the current HART routes, HART and the school district are discussing changes to assist communities without access to vehicles. Please check the emergency management website as part of preparing for a storm and possible evacuation. The previous slides provided information about facilities or infrastructure in place to assist with evacuation. The next slides provide information from the statewide regional evacuation study about how people are anticipated to evacuate. For homes and apartments built on site, for a Category 1 storm, people in Zone A, which is blue, will be mandated to evacuate. Zones A through C, in blue, orange, and gray, should evacuate for a Category 3 storm, and the set of bars shows the higher evacuation rate. The last set relates to a Category 5 storm, and over 70% of people in evacuation zones will evacuate, and about 1/3 of inland residents will evacuate. For most people living in mobile homes and RVs, almost 2/3 of people living in Evacuation Zone A will evacuate during a Category 1 storm, and over 90% in a Category 5 hurricane. Over 3 out of 4 Hillsborough County residents living in mobile homes, RVs, and manufactured homes will evacuate for a Category 5 hurricane. For Category 1 storms, of those people evacuating, the evacuation study anticipates a large share of people evacuating to stay with friends or family, approximately 4 out of 5 people living in mobile homes, and 3 out of 4 people living in site-built homes. The next largest share would stay in hotels or motels, with shelters being used by a smaller percentage of people, less than 1 in 10. People living in mobile homes stay with friends and family at a slightly larger rate. They also tend to go to public shelters at slightly higher rates. People living in site-built homes are projected to stay at hotels or motels at slightly higher rates. For Category 3 storms, of those people evacuating, there are similar projections with some refinements. For people living in mobile homes, shelter use would increase slightly and hotel or motel use would decrease. 4 out of 5 people still would stay with friends and family. For people in site-built homes, evacuation locations differ from Category 1. for zones C through E and inland, where more would stay at a shelter and fewer would stay at a hotel or a motel. For a Category 3 storm of people evacuating, less than 1 in 10 would stay in a shelter. For Category 5 storms, of those people evacuating, we start seeing more people using shelters and fewer staying at hotels or motels. For people living in mobile homes, hotel or motel use would shrink, and shelter use would increase. Similar changes are anticipated for people not living in mobile homes, with shelter use in higher zones D and E, and especially inland at 11%. Of the people evacuating, some will leave Hillsborough County. They could be traveling to second homes, staying with family and friends who live outside the county, or staying in motels or hotels, for example. People living in mobile homes or RVs in any of the evacuation zones A through E are expected to have the same percentages of people leaving the county regardless of hurricane strength. This is 40 to 45%. People inland will evacuate at slightly higher rates depending on hurricane category. This is 40 to 47%. People not living in mobile homes or RVs in evacuation zones B through E will leave the county between 47 and 50%. People in Zone A will leave the county at slightly higher rates, 50 to 52%. 50% of people living outside an evacuation zone that evacuate will leave the county. Thank you for listening and providing input. We can use your help in telling people about the study and asking them to respond to the survey. Before we end this presentation, we mentioned after the video shown earlier in the presentation, we would provide more details about the roads in Hillsborough County affected during Hurricane Irma in 2017. This information is for 3 days, September 6th through the 8th, as different parts of Florida evacuated. This is speed data that indicates the roads where travel was slower than in a prior week. On September 6, 2017, when Southeast Florida started evacuating, most traveled along the West Coast using I-75 and other north-south roads such as 301. On September 7th, it was relatively quiet with congestion on Bruceby Downs and Baum Road. On September 8th, more of the West Coast and Tampa Bay region are evacuating and I-75 is busy again.